Alrighty guys, so I asked for likes, you gave me likes, and now it's time to modify the Adventure Force Quantum. Now the Quantum is a solid primary class powerhouse, holds a lot of darts, it's ergonomically superior to the Nemesis in I think pretty much every way. Handle is comfortable, foregrip is good by going up instead of out. It stays with this much more narrow, much sleeker profile and keeps a lot of that weight in the back. It's also, there are some slight differences just in its spacing that make it very mean, very lean, very comfortable. But we've got to address the elephant in the room. The performance is not up to modified spec and it's time to give it a full mod guide plus like, come on, it's blue all over. Like, who decided blue was... Anyway, it's time to make it team red. That's the only way to do it. We've got to deal with the elephant in the room, which is that this is not a rev switch. Alright guys, so there's lots of good news and lots of exciting stuff in here. So the first thing is that this handle is all its own piece. Like, how wild is that? Everything is self-contained up in here, and I guess that that's possible because this is our actual trigger switch up in here, and then this is our rev switch, which is a monster of a regular switch, toggle switch. And then this is like, you could 3D print anything for it, but honestly it's super comfortable already. There's plenty of room down in here for us to mess with, which is nice. Ultimately, the coolest thing about this though is that we can remove it for painting. Now the foregrip, which I've already lauded for its comfort, is also a completely separate piece and just comes off. And then once butterflied and hopper removed, this is what we're working with. So you can see we've got nice, beefy springs here to accommodate that battery tray. We've got this monster switch here. Then we've got a really light switch for the actual trigger. This is the lock no matter what else we do. This is going to come out entirely. So we're going to go ahead and remove this because I think we'll keep the orange trigger. And now that this has been removed, should be able to get the whole thing out. Set that off to the side, try and keep your internals together, and then hopefully we can just pop this out and garbaggioed. So, everything else in here, now it's interesting, this looks like actual proper gauge wire, but it's not. It's just really thickly coated 20 gauge wire, but we can pull this and this out. You can see we've got all of our polarity there, and then this is our actual conveyor belt panel. It's held in with, I believe, 4 screws at a super cool angle, and we can talk about that too. So I know that doing this in real time seems silly, but I sincerely think that it's important to discuss this mechanism because up here we've got, I believe, the Tamiya Code 360 size motors, which we're so familiar with from the Rivalverse. No! My screwdriver isn't long enough for these, so we're going to have to grab, that's a torque. That's a flat. There we are. Come in here and get these guys out. So that's what these holes are for, obviously, because you don't want to go in at an angle. But as regular and expected as the 360 size motors are up in the front of the Quantum, in the back here we have something that we're even more familiar with, which is this is a 1X0 size Tamiya Code motor. I don't know if it's a 130 or a 180, but it's clearly got a gearbox up in here that we could interact with. Let's go ahead and pop these screws out and keep them somewhere safe. But you can see that the agitator and the conveyor belt, this being the agitator of course, are powered. Oh, it's like a flipper. How funny is that? Are powered off of the same 130 size motor. So while extra rate of fire is definitely in our repertoire and we will be 3S'ing this bad boy to get maximum performance, I think that we would be doing ourselves a tremendous disservice if we didn't at least put a 3S motor in here, which is entirely possible. We could always grab one of our fine Foam Blast 3S motors. We have both Krakens and Valkyries at our disposal to test. Let's find out what size it is. Like I feel like we need to know. Pat, can you go ahead and hand me a Kraken or a Valkyrie, as they are both 130s for comparison? So we're going to pull this off, and now we can tease this out, and there is a gear on there, and I am pretty confident that... Oh, there it is. So here we have a Valkyrie motor from Foam Blast, and that is a 130, and this is clearly a 130. So we'll probably just use a proper motor, and it looks like all we're going to have to do to accomplish that is pull this off carefully pull this off with we'll grab our jeweler's pliers and do that. And then we'll just throw a proper motor in there. Like, why not? So we've got Out of Darts on this side and the Valkyrie logo on the other side. So that is, of course, an Out of Darts and Foam Blast collaboration motor. But that is really good to know, that we can just put a proper motor in there and get proper performance out of it without having to worry about burning it out. Because I guarantee you whatever this is on 3S would probably go gone. And we can't have that. So, isolated unit is again very reminiscent of the Nemesis and good to know. Now we're going to come up in here, and again these look a lot like the old school sort of flywheels, which were not as high a quality and could not hold up to the 3S. So I ended up replacing mine with Zeus motors. Now while I am currently sitting on top of a bunch of Nemesis guts, I feel like I would much rather test this and see if their flywheels have gotten better, because they do look different. And if they have gotten better, we can run this on 3S. And that is where it's at. Now, you might be wondering, why dissect this whole thing? Well, A, we're going to give it a proper rewire. And then B, and more importantly, it's all 6 of these screws have to come out to get this guy out. We're going to paint this. Team Blue is just not where it's at, friends. So this is a return to our long-form mod guide style content. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, but we have walked through all of the steps of the things that we want to do, and now we'll get started on the things that we can. Oh, there was a hidden one. And that is why we make mod guides, friends. So lots of screws hold this flywheel cage in place, but once they are liberated, it is free. You can see all of the rubber bumpers, which are necessary. We will maintain them, and then pull all these screws out. Now, fortunately, all the screws seem to be of standard size, so I'm not concerned about that. And then sure enough, those are our 360 style Tamiya code motors on the back, and we should be good to go. They've got these little inductors on them, and we will remove those as well. But these motors tend to be very robust and can handle up to 3S, and the flywheels seem to be much sturdier, and they're not nearly as close, and with more space between them, we should be less at risk of melting them onto their posts. So, with all of that said, let's go ahead and start ripping out all of these guts. To do that, we're going to have to pop these screws, but I will show you painting next, and then I will show you how I've resoldered and rewired the whole thing with proper wire. But this is going to be really exciting. What a cool project. Hopefully we can come up with some sort of solution to this rev switch issue, and I think I have something in mind. Let's go. Alrighty, so plugging in our Turnigy bolt. This is a 3S battery, which is the same thing that I run Sauron on, and I actually ran this exact same battery, same charge on Sauron for a very interesting comparison that I'm going to tell you in a second. But this turned out sweet. So first off, it's the correct color now. It's Team Red. It's got a sweet gunmetal finish. We even painted up these decals with something very similar to the stock Adventure Force plastic here from Dart Zone, and it looks good. So we've loaded it up with Dart Zone balls. The big winner here is aesthetically not doing anything here leads to this double stage trigger. Now, I really like double stage triggers, but I do want to take a moment and show you a couple of photos up on screen right now. I'm going to tell you that my buddy EOC designed a rev switch specifically for this blaster because he really likes rev switches, and I mean, whatever floats your boat, guys. Like, the dual stage trigger is ridiculously complicated. It took me an hour of tinkering to get the exact fit and finish of it flawless. I actually did that entirely on my Twitch stream if you ever want to check that out, so you could see it in real time. But his way is much easier. It's much more approachable. It gives you a very clean rev switch operation that we're used to, and I think it'll be available for sale in the link below if you want to buy kind of a 3D printed kit for that. Now, you still have to do some shell modification, but it's no more or less complicated than this in terms of soldering. So that is just a fun aside. I am very proud of the two-stage trigger in this because it is very comfortable, and it kind of lets you take full advantage of how incredibly ergonomic the Quantum is. Like, the Quantum feels great. It's a little narrower than the Nemesis, and now, for some strange reason, it's got to be cage geometry. Maybe it's the hop-up tab. I'm not 100% positive. While the rate of fires are very comparable, this thing shoots an extra 15 FPS over my Nemesis, over an average of about 12 shots on each one. Sauron was putting up like 122, 121-ish, somewhere in between those, and this put up somewhere between 135 and 137. So, like, much more potent, at least. But that's enough talking about it. You guys didn't watch the mod guide to see me talk about this, and if you weren't on stream, you haven't seen this yet. So, just how cool is this dual stage trigger? Ready? So you can see that the more balls are in the hopper, the easier it is for the agitator to, well, agitate these. Running that Valkyrie motor from Foam Blast means that I don't have to worry about it burning out on 3S, which is nice, and you get possibly too much agitation. I might come back and resist it later, but, I mean, it works. The workshop is the studio is too small. It's too small to just shoot 100 Dart Zone balls everywhere. So that's the modification guide. Again, it was very simple. I didn't really talk through it because I did do it on my Twitch, but it is a 2-switch, one for the rev and then one for the actual firing mechanism. The internals are very similar to a Nemesis in terms of their overall operation, although this one uses a 130 style can and we used a Valkyrie. If you have any questions about how kind of the soldering process worked, highly recommend you checking out my Nemesis modification guide, which will be in the end screen coming up. But the components that I used, I will list in the description box below. You can buy them and support my friends who own companies in the Nerf hobby, or if they're Amazon components, you will be supporting this channel. But that is the Quantum modification guide. Clearly a thing worth doing. Very cool. Extra performance. I think that now that it's been fully modified, even though aesthetically and ergonomically, I think that it's actually better than the Nemesis in a lot of ways. I know that a lot of people will say that it is a little bit cheaper than the Nemesis, and while that's true cost-wise, I don't want to get into the full debate of Nemesis versus Quantum because I will be doing a complete video just comparing the two, and we'll talk about modified in that, but like, right now, I would rather grab this for battle. Like, this is clearly superior to that option by virtue of just the FPS boost, if nothing else. Very cool option. Very easy mod, if not a little tedious with the dual stage trigger, and there is always the option for the rev if you want to go that way. But I think that it's crazy comfortable. This is a very simple vinyl dye into enamel paint job, and you can see anything that isn't red wasn't actually painted. It's just the shell work breaks down so clean that all of these panels pop off and you're just good to go. Like, painting these blasters is so easy because of how they disassemble. I couldn't be happier about it. That's the mod guide. This is the Quantum. I'm super stoked about it. Still needs a name. So if you can come up with a great name in the description box below, let me know. And if you love my t-shirt, they're coming soon. Much love. Nerf on. Drac out.